Hello guys, welcome back to another Disney Lorcana video. This time we've got one of my favorite decks in the entire game, what I am calling Dark Elsa Aggro. We did a deck list for this a while ago, but we've gotten a bunch of new cards spoiled for Lorcana. We've got all of set 1, so we're giving it a second look with some new cards. It's got some fantastic updates. I'm very excited to play this deck in proxy and also in paper. I think this is going to be the deck that I personally am building, and I hope you guys can enjoy the deck as well. Without that, we'll get straight into the deck list for Dark Elsa. All right, so we're just going to get straight into the deck. We're going to start it off with 4 Elsa. Those who saw the other Elsa list know kind of what this deck is still trying to do. It's doing the exact same thing. We are using Elsa to control the board from our opponent. This Elsa exerts herself to exert chosen opposing character. She's also a 3 mana for 2/3. Decent stats, nothing amazing, nothing horrible. Does quest for 1, which is still good, but this exert ability is where she really comes alive. When we first read this card, I thought it was going to be terribly awful because how Lorcana plays is that you play Elsa, and then your opponent plays a card, and then it's your turn, and you use Elsa to tap their card, and then you pass. And then their thing untaps, but they couldn't have done anything with it anyways, and so then they just quest with it. And then now that it's already tapped, Elsa doesn't do anything. So that is the problem that I was trying to solve with this deck. I was trying to see if Elsa was good, and oh boy, she was actually incredible. You have to build around her. You have to build an aggro deck to actually punish your opponent's tapped characters, because while your opponent's characters are tapped, they can be challenged. And since your opponent can't do anything with their characters the turn they come down, unless they have Rush, which very few characters do, you can just go ahead, they play a character, you use Elsa to tap it, you have one of your challengers kill it, and they have gained no lore. And then if you have any other characters on your board, you can start questing, get ahead of them. Also, if your challenger has a lot of health, which a lot of the challengers in this deck do, they can live the attack, hopefully, and just kill all your opponent's heroes, kill all their characters, and once they have no cards on their board or no cards in their hand, you win the game. Because you have a bunch of guys on your board and they can't commit anything, and if they do commit, you kill before it gets them any value, and you are good to go. This deck is very, very strong, especially against the combo decks like the Hades deck and the Princesses, the Villains deck for Hades, and the Moana Princess deck. They need a bunch of guys on board, and this deck just tears your opponent's board apart. This deck does struggle against the ramp decks. It doesn't put on a bunch of pressure in the early game, and once your opponent is slamming the big high health, high attack guys, you can struggle a little bit, but we've got some new tools to hopefully help deal with that with the new cards that have been spoiled since we last built this deck. I'm very excited. So with that, we're just going to be playing 3 of the 1 mana Maleficent. It's 1 mana for a 1/1 that is inkable and it quests for 2. One of the problems with this deck is that we don't really do much questing in the early game, and so Maleficent can help round us out with that ability. We don't want to play a 4th one just because we don't really always need her. We do want to probably see about 1, but we don't really want to see more than that. 3 is the sweet spot for that in my mind. This can also help us in the mid to late game to catch up to our opponent with the double questing and just get some pressure on our opponent in the early game if they try to ignore our board. Next up, we've got the aggro package. So we've got Goons and Captain Hook, the 1 mana Captain Hook. I'm going to talk about both of these at the exact same time. So the Goons is a 1 mana inkable 2/2 that quests for 1, and Captain Hook is a 1 mana inkable 1/2 that quests for 1 and has Challenger 2. So these both play a very integral role, depending on if you're going first or going second. Currently, we're unaware if there's going to be best of 3, how tournaments are going to be held or anything like that. If we do get official word on a best of 3 with a sideboard, one of these will move to the sideboard and the other one will stay in the main board. Probably Captain Hook will stay in the main board because there's reasons for him to stay in the main board, and Goons will move to the side. The reason for this is one of these is incredibly strong going first, the other is incredibly strong going second. If you are going first, you want to commit your Goons to the board. He is a 2/2, so when you commit your Goons and then you pass play, your opponent plays their 1-drop. Almost every 1-drop in the game is going to die to Goons. It is either going to be a 1/1 or a 2/2 or something like Hook, which ends up becoming a 3/2, but they'll still die to Goons. You can go ahead and quest Goons, and then if they want to attack into you, they trade the board. That's what we want to be doing anyways. They're doing our job for us, and you get the lore. If they have something that quests for 2 or is a 1/1, you can let them quest, and then you can go ahead and attack into it, kill their thing. Maybe they get the 2 lore. If it's a Maleficent or something like that, that's totally fine. We do not care about that. We can just start eating their board right away. Now, if you're going second, you want to play the Captain Hook, because say your opponent commits something to the board, they play a Goons, right? Then you can play a Captain Hook. Captain Hook will destroy any 1-drop in the game, right? He'll just completely kill it. 3 mana, a 3 attack is very, very high. This will often kill most 2-power things in the game. So if they commit something smaller, like the 1/1 Maleficent, you can go ahead and attack the Hook into that. He will live because he's got the 2 health. Then when they commit something else, he can just attack again and take them out, because 3 power can take out most 2-drops in the game as well. This is very, very nice, very, very useful. Very good, like optional going first, going second, builds to put pressure on your opponent from as soon as turn 1. We are an aggro deck, so that's what we want to be doing. Next up, we've got Fire the Cannons. This goes along with the Captain Hook package for, if we will see in a moment. This is a 1-mana uninkable card. It's uninkable, which is a little annoying, but this card is always relevant in the deck, so you never really want to be inking it anyways. It just says deal 2 damage to chosen character. 2 damage kills a lot of the early game. It kills almost, I think it kills every 1-drop, almost all 2-drops, and a lot of 3-drops. And it's some very important 4-drops as well. The 2 damage is just incredibly useful. 2 damage plus any of our challengers will kill almost anything in the early game, a lot of things in the mid game, a few things in the late game, depends on the exact cards. This Fire the Cannons is incredibly useful. And what makes it even more useful is the 4-mana Captain Hook. Now, this card is uninkable and is 4 mana, which is a little unfortunate. There's a potential argument to cut this down to 3, but I do not like that for reasons we will see in the next card. This is a 4-mana 3/4, so good stats on the board. Quest for 1, not ideal, but we'll take it. And whenever you play this character, you may return an action card named Fire the Cannons from your discard pile straight to your hand. So this means that you are, instead of playing 4 Fire the Cannons, you're actually playing 8 Fire the Cannons. And 4 of your Fire the Cannons are a 3/4 that can quest for 1. This makes this combo incredibly powerful, and why you wouldn't really want to ink Fire the Cannons anyways, because if you ink it, it doesn't go to your discard pile. And so you can just use Fire the Cannons, kill one of your opponent's things, play Captain Hook back. If it's on turn 5, you can just go ahead and fire the cannons right away. If not, you play the Captain Hook. Next turn, you attack the hook into something that hopefully he doesn't die. Maybe he does. Throw the cannons at it, kill whatever you're looking at. This is incredibly powerful for making sure your opponent has no cards on board and maintaining card advantage as well. This is an aggro deck. We are going to be running our hand out of our hand very, very consistently. So making sure that we have more cards in our hand and on board than our opponent does is very, very important for this deck still functioning. So next up, we've got the 5-mana Captain Hook. This Captain Hook also cannot be inked, but he is so incredibly powerful. And since he's got a shift ability, I don't really care. I want to play as many of this Captain Hook as I feel comfortable with, which is 3. He is a 2/5, which is not amazing stat lines. He's got shift 3, so he can shift onto any of our Captain Hooks. You can shift onto the 4-mana hook. It's not ideal on a mana curve ways, but this hook only has an ability when he's played. So once he's played, it's okay losing that ability. And our 1-mana hook, though the curve isn't perfect, 1 mana then 3. This thing on turn 3 will make your opponent almost certainly lose the game, so it's still totally okay. We lose the Challenger 2, but those who are astute see that we pick up Challenger 3 and have better stats anyways, so we really do not care that we lose the 1-mana hook's abilities. So he has Challenger 3, so he attacks as a 5/5 for 5, which is incredibly good stats. And characters with cost 3 or less can't challenge this character. This is an incredible version of evasion. Evasion is a keyword that says this character cannot be challenged except by other characters with evasion. And this guy just says you can't challenge me if you're small. So he can only be taken out by characters that cost 3 or more, or cost 4 or more, sorry. And if you are able to shift him out on turn 3, your opponent is unable to interact with him. They just can't hit him. He's just going to tear apart their board, and there's almost nothing they can do about it. Except for direct damage from another gray deck. And at that point, he's got 5 health, which is a very hard point to hit for this deck in only 1 card. You almost always have to commit 2 cards, or sometimes even 3 cards in order to deal with that. And that is card advantage for us, baby. We're totally okay with that. So that's our Captain Hook package. Next up, we've got the Tinkerbells. So I wasn't originally playing this Tinkerbell in the original list, but we got a new Tinkerbell, so I'm very excited to play this card. This was like the 64th card that I was thinking about playing in the previous build. It's very, very strong. It is a 3-mana 2/4, so a good aggressive body that can keep its health alive in the early game. And as a backup in the mid to late game, you can exert it to draw a card and then discard a card. This can help us dig to our combo pieces like our Captain Hook and our Fire the Cannons, or our Shift Hook, or the next card we're about to look at, the Shift Tinkerbell, which is an incredibly powerful card. So I do like this Tinkerbell a lot for the card selection that she allows for the deck. If you also, like, the discard isn't even that bad because you're okay with discarding Fire the Cannons, especially since you're probably going to pick it up in a little bit with Captain Hook, especially if there's no great targets for it on the board right now. We're okay with using the discard to still fuel our game plan. And next up, we've got Big Tink. Big Tink is amazing, and I like playing 3 and 3 of these because worst case scenario, these are inkable. This is our top end, capping out at 6 mana, but she does have Shift 4, which curves perfectly with our 3-mana Tinkerbell. Play the 3-mana Tinkerbell, shift it right onto the Big Tinkerbell next turn. She is a 4/5 for 6 that quests for 2. Love that. Love a bunch of quests for 2 cards. This deck was sorely missing a lot of cards that quest for 2. Once you've actually dealt with your opponent's board, it was quite hard to close out the game because everything basically quests for 1. Questing for 2 is very, very, very important, and I like that a lot. When you play this character, deal 1 damage to each opposing character. This is incredibly useful for wiping out their early game plays. They played the early Maleficent, if they played a Pascal, if they've played, there's like a 2/1 that is incredibly powerful, I think in Amber. There's a lot of really, really powerful 1 health characters on the board. Also, this turns your cannons into 3 mana. This turns, or 3 damage, sorry. This turns any of your challengers into an extra point of damage. If you're barely leaving one of their guys alive, you can just go ahead and slam the Tink, and their guys start dying. The next effect on here is also incredibly important. During your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you may deal 2 damage to chosen opposing character. If we use the shift ability on this, she can go ahead and attack the turn she comes out. So you play the Tinkerbell, maybe you get the draw card to try and find your Tinkerbell, then you can shift this onto it, then go ahead and ping all your opponent's cards for 1 if you haven't used her ability to tap herself, because remember, if she is exerted, the shifted card will come in exerted. But if you haven't done that, then you've pinged all your opponent's characters for 1, you can go ahead and attack. You're a 4/5, you've done 1 damage to all of their characters, so you can kill anything with 5 health, and you can just go ahead and kill one of their guys, and then deal 2 more damage to something else that will have the 1 damage already marked on it from her previous ability. She's just going to tear house, and she's just, your opponent is forced to answer her immediately. Whether you play her for 6 mana or 4 mana, she is a powerhouse at any point in the game, just tearing apart your opponent's board. Helps you get that extra little bit of reach on the opposing characters that are very high power, or very high willpower, have very high toughness. You can swing Tinkerbell into their small characters so that she doesn't take much damage, and then throw 2 free damage onto the big characters, or one of your small, less important, less valuable characters, or some of your direct damage spells can go ahead and take care of it. Speaking of high-value challengers, we've got Zeus, another very important character. He is uninkable, which is why we're not playing 4. Unfortunately, I'd much prefer him to be inkable because this deck kind of struggles with having a lot of non-inkable cards, but a lot of them we don't really care about. He is a 0/4 that quests for 2. He's got Rush, so he can challenge the turn he has played, and he's got Challenger 4. So he comes out swinging immediately as a 4/4. Your opponents have to respect this card if they're playing the more creature combo decks. If they play one of their 3-drops and they just go ahead and get greedy and start questing it, you can just start smashing them in the face with this Zeus as soon as he comes down. Very, very powerful. And he's got that beautiful 2 lore. So once we've cleared up our opponent's board, he starts questing. He starts questing for 2 and getting us back in the game. Love that. Continuing our challenger package, we've got 2 mana Dr. Facilier, a 0/4, very similar to Zeus, but since he's only 2 mana, he doesn't have Rush, and he only challenges for 2. Still incredibly powerful at holding down the early game at his 2 mana value, and he is inkable, so in the mid to late game, where that extra 2 damage isn't going to be terribly valuable, we can start inking him to play our bigger threats. And following up that, we've got Prince Eric. He is the second Dr. Facilier, basically. Wanted more things in the early game to really control the board, really punish these combo decks that are getting hella greedy out here. And so he's a 1/3 that challenges for 2. That means he challenges as a 3/3. And he quests for 1 on the back end. Incredibly powerful effect. This brings all of our challenge. We have a bunch of challengers in this deck. We've got the 1 mana Captain Hook. We've got the 2 mana Facilier, 2 mana Prince Eric. We've got the 5 mana Captain Hook. We've got the 6 mana Tinkerbell. She doesn't really have challenger, but she really punishes your opponents when you attack with her. And we've got the 4 mana Zeus as well to go with our challenger package. Just to continue removing all of our opponent's creatures on the board, we've got Smash. 3 mana inkable card, says deal 3 damage to chosen character. Very simple, very efficient. Like I said, 3 damage is our sweet spot. It's another reason why I really like Prince Eric a little bit more than Facilier, although I do like having a second copy of basically a bad Prince Eric. It's still Prince Eric. 3 mana takes out almost anything in the game. In the early game, the 3 mana spot, you are just going to spend 3 mana, kill almost any other 3 mana character on the board, kill a lot of 4 cost characters, and even some 5 cost characters. Really get that mana advantage. If it's on turn 5, you can commit a Smash, kill something, commit a Prince Eric, and then your opponent has to really, really think about what they're playing, because Prince Eric's just going to kill whatever they play next. Very, very nice. Now to keep up our cards in hand, keep up our hand advantage, as we are going to be trading a lot of our cards for our opponents, we're going to be running our hand out quite quick. So we've got Beast Mirror. You can tap this and pay 3 mana if you have no cards in your hand to draw a card. This is quite a steep price, admittedly. And since we're in purple, you might be wondering, why not play the Magic Mirror, which is only, I believe it's 3 mana to play it, and it's 4 mana or I believe it's also 2 mana to play it. It's 4 mana, but it just says draw a card. Tap it 4 mana, draw a card. The mirror cannot be inked. That's basically the short of it. The mirror can't be inked, or the magic mirror can't be inked. The beast mirror can, and we run our hand out so often that this is still very live. Most of the time, you still use its effect a lot. And since it's 1 mana cheaper, we don't really commit a lot of mana or a lot of ink into our inkwell, because we cap out at 6 and 5, and those are shift characters, so we can realistically play them for a lot cheaper. So we are going to have a decent amount of cards. We want to be committing almost all of our hand to the board. We'll have a decent amount of mana in our ink, and we want to have as much of that available for us when we use the Beast Mirror as possible. And multiples of these, not very strong. You really only want to see 1 of them. You definitely want to see 1, which is why we're playing it at 3, but you really don't want to see more than 1, which is why we're not playing at 4. But also, because it has the ability to be inked, this is very, very nice. If you do see the multiples, you can go ahead and slap it in the inkwell and keep fueling the Beast Mirror you already have. You cannot do that with the Magic Mirror. I find myself bricking on a bunch of Magic Mirrors that I can't get out of my hand because I can't ink them. I don't have the mana, the ink to like use their abilities because they're all stuck in my hand. Don't like the Magic Mirror as much for this deck, for this aggro deck. For a more mid-range build, I like the Magic Mirror a lot. For this aggro deck, I prefer the Beast Mirror. And next up, we've got a brand new song to this deck, A Whole New World. 5 mana, uninkable, which is why we're only running 2. I'd love to play more than 2 of these. And because it's a song and we've got the new Captain Hook and the new Big Tinkerbell, we can actually sing these, which is very, very useful. So as it's a song, any character that costs 5 or more can exert themselves to sing the song for free, so you don't have to pay the mana value. And each player discards their hand and then draws 7 cards. This is incredibly powerful against those ramp decks that are going to be holding onto all their late game threats and the mid game around turn 5, right when you want to be playing this card, right before they start committing everything to the board with their early game ramp. And you are running your hand out. If you have no cards in hand, this says draw 7. And if you sing it, it's draw 7 for free, bro. You win that game on the spot. You go into these combo decks who are trying to hold their Moanas, hold their Tamatoas, hold their Hades in their hand. You get that shit right out of there. You're going into these ramp decks, trying to hold Aladdins, trying to hold Big Mickeys, trying to hold Maleficents, Big Maleficents. Get that shit right out of their hand. They ain't going to be able to get it back. And you're going to discard maybe 1, maybe 2 cards. If you sing it off of Hook or Tinkerbell, you just instantly win the game. You draw 7 more cards. They have 7 cards as well, but you probably have a board, and your cards are meant to trade for their cards. They're not going to be able to keep everything on the board. You're going to 2-for-1 them all day. Speaking of 2-for-1, we've got the beautiful, lovely 3-mana Maleficent. This card is inkable, and I just love what this card does for this deck. It says it's 3-mana inkable for a 2/2, the quest for 1. When you play this character, you may draw a card. This just goes in for the 2-for-1 effect. You play this on turn 3. Maybe your opponent has quested something on their turn 2 or their following turn 3. You swing this Maleficent in, you get the trade, you get the 1-for-1, but she added a card to your hand. So you're up a card already, baby. And then you just play that new card, and they fall behind. They start falling behind immediately. The Maleficents chain into themselves incredibly well. You play a Maleficent, you draw a new Maleficent, you swing this Maleficent in, you play a Maleficent, you draw a new Maleficent, swing this Maleficent in. Oh, baby, you just go so hard, so fast, just destroying their board. And since it's already done its job once it's on the board, this is perfect for dealing that extra little chip damage to the high health characters, so that your Smash, so that your Big Tinkerbell, so that your Captain Hook, so that all your challengers can do the finishing blow. Really, really love what this Maleficent does for the deck. The only thing that would make her better is if she quested for 2, but can't ask for everything. And to round out the deck, we've got Friends on the other side. Want to keep our cards in hand high, and since especially this Maleficent goes so well with his Friends on the other side, able to sing it for 3 mana. Almost every card in our deck is able to sing this Friends on the other side immediately. It's just basically the Maleficent and the 2 early game challengers and the small hook. This is also a great backup for our Elsa. If they're too scared to commit anything to the board and we're only questing for 1 or 2, oh baby, you can punish them super hard by having her sing Friends on the other side, draw 2 free cards, start playing them immediately. Since you use her to sing it, you still have all your mana up, all your ink up, and you are good to go. Friends on the other side is an incredible card in this deck. Basically does what Maleficent does, but sometimes it's free, and Maleficent is never free. Sometimes this card is free. Worst case scenario, it's a Maleficent. Best case scenario, it's a free Maleficent. It's so strong. Friends on the other side is an incredible card. Personally, I find this to be a staple in every Amethyst deck that I'm ever running. It's a common, as we can tell by the symbol, so expect to pull a lot of these when you get your packs. Keep an eye on this card. It's a common, it's crazy. Do not throw away your commons for this game, especially if you're trying to build decks. This Friends on the other side is incredible. And that wraps up our Dark Elsa aggro deck. One of the best parts about this deck is the naming convention, of course. I like my Disney characters, and I like giving them funny deck names. So Dark Elsa is what we're going for this one. This is an aggro deck that really takes advantage of Elsa's ability to prevent your opponent from getting any lore. Once they fall behind on the board, anytime they try to commit something to the board to gain lore, because currently the only way to gain lore is by going on quests with characters, you kill that character before it does anything good for them. And since you've got a bunch of characters on board already, you start swarming them, you start questing yourself, and you win the game. This is an incredibly fun deck. If you guys are excited about Disney Lorcana just like we are, keep your eyes on the channel. We got a bunch more deck lists coming for you. We got a new Princess Moana Princess combo deck coming for you with updated cards. We also uploaded the Hades Villain combo deck. So if you're a combo fiend like I am, keep an eye out for those decks. And we will see you guys in the next video. Have a good one. Peace.